Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are going to be talking about Dungeon 23. Dungeon 23 is a challenge slash community project slash initiative proposed by Sean McCoy, the designer of the Mothership RPG, to encourage people to create their own mega dungeons by drawing a dungeon room every day in 2023. The idea is to create a 12-level dungeon, one level per month, and then have a 365-room, 12-level dungeon at the end of the year. While I love the idea, I do not like the scope. One, I don't like mega dungeons. I don't find them very practical or useful for my own games. Two, my number one motto for these kinds of things is start small. I know that I will never do a room a day. I have too many other things competing for my hobby time. So I am doing a room a week. And so I am calling my project Dungeon 3.285 as a joke there. My main goal with the project is to practice my dwindling drawing skills with the hopes of having a cool dungeon and dungeon diary I can turn into a book to give to my patrons when it is all said and done. Throughout the year, we will be visiting my dungeon that I am creating with the help of Dungeon Dive patrons. I am asking them for cool things that they would like to see, maybe some ideas, some prompts, some suggestions, some influence. And when we look at what I am creating, we will also be looking simultaneously at some tools that people might find useful for a project like this. So today, as we take a look at my first 3 dungeon rooms, we are also going to be taking a look at the Dungeon Diary of Daedalus from Shieldice Studios. This is a very valuable book that contains a wealth of information about creating dungeons. And this physical copy was provided to me by Shieldice Studio. And while this physical copy is not available to purchase anymore, at least not at this time, digital copies are available on DriveThruRPG, and you can get digital copies and make your own diaries. You will get digital copies of everything that I show you today. Okay, so let's talk about the background of my dungeon. Many eons ago on the planet Morago, legend tells of a giant disc-shaped metal object engulfed in flame falling from the sky and crashing into the peaks of the Gondahar Mountains, near the peaceful Valley of the Wind and the Plateau of Many Lakes. Over time, the people of the Gondahar Mountains began exploring the devastation created at the crash site. They began to build their cities around the crater. They felt compelled to dig, to discover, and to devote themselves to unearthing whatever it was that crashed there. For thousands of years, the Gondaharians devoted their lives to this endeavor, and then they vanished. Since the time of the Gondaharian evaporation, many peoples have come and gone from the area, building upon the things that were once there, changing the landscape over time. And each new people that inhabited the area have felt a diminishing urge to explore, to dig, and to unearth. One of the latest was the UFO cult of... So, that cult is spelled QWOLATO, but the language is an alien species, or the language derives from an alien species that does not have vocal cords. So all of the voiced words are only with breath and mouth shape, mouth noises. So that word is pronounced... I don't know if that's coming through the speaker. It's an unearthly word that is probably best left unuttered. But that is how it is spelled, and that is... All right, there. So let's take a look at my dungeon real quick. I have 3 rooms. This is the 3rd week of January here. So this is my Dungeon 23 or Dungeon 3.285. Remember, start small. Buy the Dungeon Dive and Dungeon Dive patrons. featuring the UFO cult of... Okay, so here we have the entrance, and the entrance is through a waterfall cave. The waterfall cave entrance. In the peaks of the Gandhar Mountains near the plateau of many lakes, there exist the cliffs of many waterfalls. Within the pool at the base of one of the many waterfalls is the main entrance to the dungeon. To enter the cave, you must dive deep into the pool at the base of the waterfall between the two dead and ancient oak trees. At the bottom of the pool is a long submerged tunnel leading into the entrance chamber. In the chamber is the entrance to the dungeon through a passageway carved of stone being watched by a face seemingly carved of an otherworldly stone, and yet in some ways the face seems alive. So there's the waterfall. You have to dive into the base of the waterfall and swim under, and then you emerge inside a waterfall cave from this pond here, this pool of water. And there is the entrance to the dungeon, and there is the stone face there. And then we have room number 2 here is the entrance hall. So the entrance hall. The entrance hall is a large room. In the middle of the hall is a large sculpture of a beast with giant horns and spikes lining its back. The beast's vision is transfixed on an eternal flame smoldering in 3 large stone braziers. Who or what keeps these fires stoked and burning? So here's the pool outside. You will come in. There's the eternal flames there smoldering away. And then there is the stone statue. There are exits to the north, east, and west. And south leads back out to the waterfall cave entrance. And then to the east here, we have the changing room. And this was inspired by a prompt written by Christopher Zirk, a Dungeon Dive patron. And that is to the east of the main hall there. Okay, in this medium-sized room, there is a large armoire surrounded by 6 stone changing seats. It looks like a changing room, and it is. Within the armoire is a constantly refreshed stock of purple robes. Who is handling the laundry? Where are the discarded clothes and dirtied robes? To the north of the changing room is a small chamber partially blocked by crumbling debris. Within this small chamber is a basin filled with water, surrounded by 4 lit candles placed in holes drilled into the ground. As a rite of passage, initiates into the UFO cult of must change into the dry robes and then be able to wash their faces in the basin, leaning over the candles without disturbing the flames or getting a single drop of water on their robes. To the east of the changing room is another exit. So these are the rooms I have so far. I have decided to do my dungeons on these dotted index cards that I got from Amazon. I think these are pretty handy. It will be fun to kind of lay out my dungeon. I don't know how much room it's going to take. It might take up my whole table at the end of the year, but these are really cool. And then, if you wanted to, you could do kind of like a random dungeon mode when this is all done. So I think this is going to be very useful and practical. Those are my first 3 rooms there: the entrance hall, and the changing room. And then I am typing up my journal into a Word doc because I hate writing by hand. I have really bad handwriting, and I'm a pretty bad speller because I'm slightly dyslexic. But anyways, let's now take a look at the Shieldice Studio Dungeon Diary of Daedalus. Again, everything that you're going to see from here on out, you can get in the digital version on DriveThruRPG. So this is a very useful set of books that is all about creating a dungeon. This says, you have found the Dungeon Diary of Daedalus, the master craftsman and builder of the great labyrinth for Minos on Crete. Using this diary, you may initially plan the dungeon, but you will not build it alone. It is made real at the table with the aid of players. Like Daedalus, you, the dungeon master, may design the architecture of the labyrinth, but your son Icarus, the players, and Theseus, the story, will help you to construct it. So Shieldice Studios is, I think, one of the premier creators of these kinds of tools that that help us create things at the table. And while a lot of their tools that they have created are not specifically made for the solo player in mind, they are incredibly helpful for the solo player. And that is how I always use them. But this book is simply overflowing with information on creating dungeons. You get all kinds of things about how to draw your rooms, how to create different rooms, 6x6 rooms, curved rooms, angled rooms, jagged variants, rounded rooms. You get small rooms, large rooms, information on pillars and columns, tiles, villages and taverns, dungeon types, depth charts, dungeon names, archways, keys, traps, inhabitants, natural hazards, lighting, NPCs, and on and on and on. This is such a cool book. I love just picking this up and looking at it. Not only is it useful, but it's fun to read as well, and it's just fun to pick up every once in a while and have a look. You have some notes on how to create mega dungeons, how to use all of your tables, how to use the room tiles. And then it starts off by giving you a nice little legend here, some icons that you can use, an example dungeon that has been created using the random tables from this book. And then we get into our main tables here for the actual dungeon rooms, the layout. And you have a D12 dungeon entrances, D12, D20 6x6 rooms, 6x6 angled variants, curved variants, jagged variants, 5x5 rooms, 4x4 rooms, different kinds of pillars and columns, unique rooms here, 12x12 arena style rooms. And then we have some island and boat tiles that you can have. So if you have like a submerged dungeon or something like that, we have a 5-room dungeon generator that is done by dropping 5d6. Then you can look at the layout, and then you can look at the dice, and they'll tell you what is in each room, whether it be an NPC, a sentinel, atmosphere, explore, secret, or a separated. Here we have some ideas for some temples and taverns. And then we have what's the adventure? What's the calling to this dungeon? So you can even create scenarios using this book by rolling on these tables here. We have different dungeon locations. Where is your dungeon located? Maybe it's an abandoned mine shaft or the mouth of a beast, a swirling deep whirlpool, different dungeon types, castles, keeps, great forges, sewers, layers, dugouts, a buried machine. That's kind of mine there, a buried machine, volcanic fissure. I wanted to do my dungeon, the UFO cult of as kind of a science fiction dungeon, set in an ancient world, so I can incorporate all kinds of the things that I love from fantasy and from science fiction. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we have planar or unique dungeons within a giant's kitchen, burning palace of a fire god, aerial dungeons, watery dungeons, sentient or living dungeons, the living curse of a crypt of a king, the mouth of a dragon. Here we have different dungeon depth chart showing going from the peak of a mountain all the way down into like the trenches of the ocean. Dungeon name generator. You might have the pits of the starlit wolf or something like that. Then it gives you some ideas on some like Mad Lib, fill in the blank names there. Quick concepts for your dungeons, surrounding notes on the wilderness, lore and backstory for your dungeon uniqueness. What makes your dungeon unique? Maybe it is dead trees lie before the passage, or maybe a young girl makes her home here, or gravity inverts every few hours, things like that. Different kinds of enemy themes from beasts, undead, lizard folk, vampire, water folk. Maybe a group of rival adventurers is also exploring the dungeon while you are. Maybe some of the enemies, some of the inhabitants, the denizens might have their own goals. Maybe what is their temperament? What are they doing? What are the monsters doing in their dungeon? And then we have all kinds of different light temperatures, light sources. What are the causes of darkness? What are the ramifications of it being dark and light? If a blinding light all of a sudden flashes in the dungeon, what happens to the explorers? They have various dungeon room types, so you can roll up your castle, your holy rooms, your caverns and caves, different dungeon dressing, doors, walls, angles of ceiling, different kinds of stairs. I mean, you can get really into the nitty-gritty using this book. It has so much detail, and it's small and compact, and yeah, it's just overflowing with useful information on creating dungeons. I think I wanted to start off this Dungeon 23 project looking at this because I think a lot of people will get a lot of use on their own dungeons from this book. And then when you buy the PDF, you will also get your own diary that you can print out, which starts with some hex pages so you can map out your surrounding area. And then you will also get places here where you can come up with your own NPCs, draw a little portrait, have a little description of the NPC there. And then this is an old dungeon that I was starting to draw. And then it just has pages of notes and graph paper. And here you can just make up your own dungeons. So you have a really nice diary of a place to keep your dungeon. So I think this could also be useful. You could just print out the pages from the PDF and use this for your Dungeon 23 diary. Along with those two books, you will also get PDF printouts that you can make for the Dungeon Beast Builder. So this is a way to make monsters for your dungeon. You have a 4d20 rolls here. So you might have a crazed, mossy zombie who is deaf. And then inside you might have from its body protrudes, the beast smells like, it carries with it and merchants will pay for its. You also have how it attacks, when the beast dies, what happens. And then one of the Shieldice likes these little kind of like Mad Lib things about how you can awaken the beast. So again, a very useful little pamphlet there. You can get a bookmark that you can print for if you are doing a 1/4-inch graph paper. So you can kind of draw your little dungeon tiles there using that graph paper. You will get a Tome of Traps pamphlet that has D20 traps on there. You will also get a Tome of Terrors pamphlet that has a D20 different kinds of horrible books that you might be able to find. A D20 Tome of Treasure pamphlet. And you will also get this dungeon tracker, which you can keep track of the depth that your explorers are going down, what their thirst level is, what their sanity level is, and what the timer, if you want to keep track of a timer. So yeah, just a ton of really useful and well-designed, well-presented information in the Dungeon Diary of Daedalus. And I think it will help a lot of people in their Dungeon 23 projects, or in my case, Dungeon 3.285, because remember, I'm only doing a room a week. And we have so far, for the first 3 weeks of January, we have the Waterfall Cave entrance, which leads into the entrance chamber here. And then to the east of the entrance chamber is the changing room for the UFO cult of. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at Dungeon 23, my Dungeon 23, and of the Dungeon Diary of Daedalus. I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.